At any rate, thanks for coming, and more than that, thanks for being my friend and my business associates over the years. Now, about tonight, I don't know anything about the program that Terry has planned, but knowing how Terry operates and how Tracy and the others who put this affair together work, I know it'll all be done in first class and with dignity. There are, however, two areas of concern that I've had because, first of all, due to the weather, and secondly, because I know how these things work. And the first of these is the boredom factor. And by that, I mean, you're going to sit here tonight, and you're going to hear person after person stand up and give those words of praise. Words like amazing, brilliant, and a phrase like the reincarnation of Einstein. And eventually, the boredom factor can kick in. I've been there, and I know where you're sitting now. The other area is tied to that, and also is a factor is affected by the weather. And that is that these affairs tend to run on and on. But this afternoon, based on the weather, I was able to design a system that I think will solve both those problems. And now with the assistance of my lovely assistant, this will be brief, Terry. What we did, we went through all the hundreds of emails and telegrams I've already received and picked out the 5 most popular phrases or words that were in those. Can you all see that okay? Another round of applause for this. Now, you'll notice that each of those has a number alongside it. So when it comes your turn to put out your words of praise, all you need to do is stand up and call out a number. And we'll know exactly what you mean. We can move this thing along. We'll have a great dinner, a couple of drinks, good fellowship, and we'll all be home to watch the Pops at 8. Thank you. Now back to Terry.
I first met Dottie and her little dog Lolly, and then I met Guy, and he was a love, just the sweetest man.
The guy was one of the best guys ever for mentoring people like us in business.
Buttermilk was a very medicinal product after a long day's work. That's all I'm going to say about that.
There's always alcohol and laughter involved in any after work project.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, which is most of you, my name is Jim Basilia. I am Guy and Dottie's travel agent and have been so for over 25 years. During that time, I've had the pleasure of getting to know Guy both on a business and personal level. We've shared some wonderful times, and I will greatly miss him. Dottie asked me to say a few words today, and I feel touched and very honored to do so. When thinking about what to say about Guy, I found it a little difficult. Frequently, when doing this kind of thing, you try to identify some of the person's more admirable traits, separate them from the not so admirable, and talk about the good ones. In Guy's case, at least from what I know and saw, most of his life was admirable. Most notably, I never heard Guy say anything really bad about anybody, even if they deserved it. Never did I see anger get the better of him, and he had the manners of a Southern gentleman. To me, this is what separates a person like Guy from most of us. He was a legitimately good, nice, and respectful person. That may seem kind of trite, but in Guy's case, I believe it to be true. I can still recall the day Dottie first contacted me to book what I believe was their first cruise, though it would turn out to be the first of many. Eventually, Dottie and Guy became some of our very best clients, traveling constantly around the world. Indeed, my wife Brenda and I still joke to this day that Dottie and Guy must have put at least one of our children through college. It probably is more than that. As time went by, we got to know the Crains better and traveled with them on a number of their adventures. Sundowners on the Land Rover in South Africa while game viewing, and the Battle of the Waterhole between the Lions and Cape Buffalo on the same trip stick in my mind, as well as the time in Rio when Guy and I, challenged by the language barrier, took a trip to the meat locker thinking we were looking for ice cream. Many of our mutual cruise friends have since passed on, but the memories remain vivid and will remain with us forever. After Guy and Dottie's travels slowed down a bit, we still managed to see each other in Atlanta, Harbor, Washington, or here in the Villages. Our epic Mexican train tournaments in multiple venues, trophies and all, come to mind. Another occasion I remember fondly was a visit we made to Atlanta when we all decided we needed to develop the perfect lemon drop martini. Needless to say, after too much experimentation, we were all the worse for wear. But finally, the more sensible of us, the men in the group, had to call off the quest, as Dottie, my wife Brenda, and Guy's daughter Susie were just a little too enthusiastic for their own good. Though I'm sure by the next morning, they had little recollection of the event. Through all these good times, it became so obvious to me that Guy was one of those rare beasts, a really good man. He took care of his business, mentored who knows how many people, took care of his friends, helped out those he didn't even know, and oh, how he loved his wife Dottie. And of course, as I said earlier, he loved his traveling too. I always found his stories of his early business trip to China especially interesting. I always enjoyed working with Guy and Dottie, putting their trips together, as their enthusiasm was so infectious. There was one instance that I'll always remember. I really thought it illustrated Guy's humor at the time. In all the years I handled Guy and Dottie's travel, it was always Dottie who made the arrangements and handled the details. Guy pretty much went along with whatever Dottie and I decided. One time, Dottie and I were discussing a cruise, and we were weighing the pros and cons of spending considerably more money on a bigger suite. We went back and forth with it for a number of days. Well, one morning I got a phone call from Guy wanting to discuss his trip. This was very strange because, as I said, I've always discussed these issues with Dottie and had never ever discussed details with Guy. Well, evidently Guy liked the idea of the bigger suite and thought Dottie and I were over discussing the issue. He informed me that I should remember whose name was on the front of the credit card that he was paying me with. Well, let's just say that ended the discussion there. I've laughed so many times just thinking of that instance over the years. You know, that was Guy. On a more serious note, I really wish that I had gotten to know Guy better on a little deeper level. I could have learned a lot from him, but now that's not to be, and I'll regret it. I believe that most of us here are Christian, or at least come from some kind of Judeo-Christian background. But I know we probably have very different theological notions of what happens immediately after death. Some of us might believe the soul goes immediately to heaven. Others may believe a further period of purification, like some call purgatory, might be necessary for a while. And obviously, I'm not God or a very good theologian, and I certainly can't judge. But if I were to die tomorrow and be fortunate enough to get to heaven, I would certainly expect to meet Guy there, enjoying being with his children and grandchildren, and maybe Killer and Lolly too. I just hope he's holding a scotch and not one of those lemon drop martinis in his hand.
For shame.
Goodbye, Guy, until we meet again.
Hi, everybody. We all loved Guy for his kindness, his humor, his beautiful smile, how he made us feel, and so much more. I so much loved and appreciated Guy's patience and the support he gave Dottie and me when the Doggy Circus was only an idea in our heads and we started writing a script around the tricks the dogs could do. We would bounce ideas off of Guy, and he always would say it sounded good. I'm not sure if they really sounded good, or if Guy was just being kind, or maybe he was just trying to get us to quit bugging him. I'll always remember and appreciate the suggestions and help Guy gave us when Dottie and I were designing the PVC frame for the circus backdrop, and his many trips to Ace Hardware to cut more PVC pipe, and how he never complained. And I'll always remember after Dot, Lolly, and Mickey Mouse got married, how Guy always said that Mickey was his son-in-law. It always makes me laugh getting emails from Guy thanking me for reminding Dottie to bring him some cake from whatever function we were at. I remember how he always cooked chicken for his beloved Lolly, how he loved football and would tease me about LSU. But most of all, I loved and admired the way Guy adored Dottie and how proud he always was of her. His love and concern for Dottie were evident in his planning her birthday celebration for after he was gone. Guy was truly a gentleman and a very special man. I feel blessed to have known him and had him as my friend. He will be very greatly missed.
Hi, I'm Terry Johndall. I'm the CEO of CAB Worldwide, which Guy founded in 1982. I had long, dark hair and that, so you probably wouldn't recognize me. Sort of like Dottie yesterday when I showed up. She didn't know that I'd gone gray and short hair, and she thought I was an intruder in the dinner last night. But I think it's time that I straighten out a few things. I hear so many nice things about Guy, and what happened in the villages? I mean, there was some kind of transformation. Guy has been one of the fiercest entrepreneurs you will ever know. He was also an astounding leader in industry as at L.B. Foster, a large business in the industrial piping sector. And he came out of that field realizing that he liked to be a big fish in a small pond. And so he started business after business after business. In fact, Guy became brilliant, yes, that's one of the words, at chasing rabbit holes. Guy could sell anything to anyone. And as a mentor, he taught us, didn't he, Bill? He taught us to sell, oh boy, things that, well, we only sold them once in many cases. But amid all of that, Guy swung some real grand slams. And over the years, this is a man who, in my case, he opened my eyes to the fact that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And I always said, my mother said that, but my mother wasn't an entrepreneur. She just sort of, she was coaching her kids. But Guy Crain was doing it. He was living it every moment. And all of us, and there are several of us here in this room who were profoundly impacted by Guy's mentoring over the years. And at the same time of him being fierce, serious, he was also fun and lovable. So yes, he was a nice guy, but I don't want to take away from the fact that there is nobody, not nobody, who can do business the way Guy Crain can. He built a business from nothing to we peaked above $100 million in recent years, and we're still going. And we have expanded into a wide variety of products and services. And it's all because of the attitude that he left us with, that you can do whatever you think you can do. And we would get it in our mind, and I would say, I don't know how we're going to finance that. And he would say, you don't need to worry about that. You just go sell it. And Bill, that selling thing, there's a few products. I don't know if you notice these irrigation things out there that roll down the fields. Well, at the tippy top of them is this round U-shaped thing called a pivot loop. What in the hell he thought we should be in that business for? We're steel pipe flange people. We don't know anything about pivot loops. But he bought 40,000 pounds of them, brought them in. I had them all pre-sold to some people I didn't know in Nebraska. And they all arrived up there in the cornfields, only to not be threaded correctly, and none of them worked. So they were delightful boat anchors, but we proudly walked away and of course credited their invoice. But he forced us to expand our wings, push the envelope, and try a whole bunch of different stuff, and there was a whole bunch that did work. So when you think about the guy that you've seen down here doing dog circuses, which sounds fabulous, by the way.
He didn't do it.
There was a beast behind that man who was lovingly brilliant, and all of us appreciate every moment we had. But I want to tell you, the thing that he will most be remembered for is his prankstership. Nobody pranked better than Guy. And I can't even begin to tell you how many pranks there were. I thought, okay, which things should I talk about? And my father was also a prankster, and over the years after my mom passed, my dad and Guy got to know each other and traveled to India, and I think he pulled a prank on you in Hong Kong and flew my dad in from I don't know where in the heck he was, but they both were a bit of a prankster. And I had moved into a new house, and somebody, I think my dad, planted a small little bush in my backyard. I don't know why. I was at work. He needed something to do, so he dug. And apparently, it took me a while to catch the drift. Guy Crain, my father lived in Idaho and been visiting. Guy Crain had been sneaking into my yard every couple of nights and replanting a larger and larger and larger plant. About 4 weeks later, my dad says, "Hey, have you looked at that plant lately?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, "Well, just put the phone down, run out and look at it." And I went out and looked at it. It's 4 feet tall. So they had, that was a little weird. But my all-time favorite, and Guy's all-time favorite prankster was Dottie. And I have to tell this story because it shall live on forever in our brains. Sometimes Guy would arrange pranks from long distance. And one time he was in India, and it was on a business trip, but they also took time to go out into the whatever it is. We're not in the jungle, are we? It might be the jungle. And they would go out and do some looking for tigers work. Well, it was an especially hot time in India on this trip, and he calls Dottie every night to give her an update. And he says, "Dottie, it is so hot here. There's a real big problem with these tigers. They're getting really overheated." He says, "So we're going out into the jungle, and we're going to be doing some work on shaving the tigers." He says, "It's going to help cool them off, and it'll help rescue them from the heat." And so he was excited to report this to her. Well, She waltzed into my office the next day to give me a report on how Guy's trip was going, and she's standing in my office beginning to tell me this story about how Guy is shaving the tigers. And extra long extension cord. No, she goes into all this detail. Guy has all this extra long extension cord. And I'm sitting there at my desk, being all businesslike, watching her and thinking, what? And then as she finally stopped and took a breath, I said, Dottie, have you ever said this out loud before? And at that moment, we both realized she'd been had. And Dottie and I both were on the floor rolling. I mean, we could not contain ourselves. We will never forget that. It was absolutely priceless. But that's just one of many things that Guy has done over the years. And I wish that I could spend another hour and a half talking. There are several of us who could. But this is a man who not only was he funny, not only was he could write poems, he could write songs. This guy used to make us train on songs and choreography and costumes to sing to people on their birthday, like Terrence on his 30th. And I can remember having to go to Guy and Dottie's house to practice. I'm running a company. What? I gotta go practice singing and all this other stuff that I hate? But Guy was like that. He could persuade anybody to do anything. So we love and miss Guy. I know that he's up there with the bottle of scotch and my dad, probably pranking all the angels, probably they're probably suggesting that maybe he made the wrong stop that direction. But we love Guy. We truly appreciate him. He was a life-changing influence in all of our lives. And thank you very much, Adi.
I'll just tell one quick story because you talked about pranks. So we're next door neighbors, and about 10 years ago, we went in on a tree. We call it Mamma Mia. It's a cocktail citrus tree. I don't know if you've seen these things. It's got lemons, limes, oranges, tangerines, miniolas, and grapefruit. 6 things grafted into one tree. Well, when we first got it, we got lemons, we got limes, we got oranges, we got miniolas. We never got a grapefruit. I would walk by the tree every once in a while. We'd fertilize it. As you know, Guy also loved to take care of plants. And one day I noticed there was a big grapefruit on the tree. And I got really excited. There was no grapefruit 2 days earlier. And I said, did I miss this thing? So I ran in the house all excited. Gracine, come out. Daddy, come out. Guy, come out. Called him on the phone. Everybody came out and were oohing and ahhing. This thing grew overnight. Well, it turned out Guy had meticulously glued the grapefruit onto the tree. I mean, who does this? He had that twinkle in his eye, and he took out his little scissors, and I cut off the grapefruit, and I saw on the bottom it said Publix. So that was. Then we decided to get them back, but maybe I shouldn't tell that story. The short version is, we waited a couple of months and we put a sign in our window, and we're very good friends besides being neighbors. We put a sign in our window that our house was for sale. We told everybody that lived around us except Guy and Dottie. So I got a call from Andy, who lived across the street, and he said, I think you better say something. I saw Guy today and he had a tear in his eye. So I called and spilled the beans. I won't repeat what Dottie said after that. Anyway, Brenda. We loved him and we'll miss him.
Okay, you guys are all really good at that. On the way here, I was Googling how to keep from crying while you speak and you're feeling emotional. And Google told me to bite my tongue, pinch myself, or do jumping jacks, and none of that will be happening. So I'm gonna do my best. So I'm Brenda Basilia, I'm Jim's wife, and I had the privilege of saying a few words about Guy at his retirement party 16 years ago, and I'm just finding this to be a little bit harder, but here I am. I've visited the villages several times since the Crains moved here from Atlanta. Most of the time, Guy's daughter Susie came at the same time, and Susie and Dottie and I were waited on by the world's best cabana boy, Guy. Our cocktail glasses were never empty, and we were always treated to a steak dinner artfully prepared by Guy. And if anyone here has ever had Guy's Pittsburgh-style steak, then you know it can't be replicated even by the most famous steakhouses in the country. Aside from making sure our needs for food and drink were met, he supported our need to connect with each other. Our bond with each other and my bond with Guy grew stronger and stronger each time we gathered on Willow Grove Way. In December of 2021, Susie was taken from us suddenly and way too soon. Shortly after that, I started to visit more frequently. This period of time, the past 2.5 years, is what I want to tell you about. During the first few visits, even though Guy was having some health challenges, he could drive and tend bar and prepare the ever-famous Pittsburgh steak we all looked forward to. Guy, Dottie, and I ate together, drank together, watched football, or something else if football wasn't available. We laughed when we retold stories about Susie and cried when we just couldn't hold it in, and it was all okay. When I was with them, I didn't have to be alone with my feelings of loss. As Guy's health declined, I found myself visiting even more frequently. I wanted to step up in honor of Susie and in support of Dottie and do what I could do to make things a little easier. Sometimes that was just riding around in the car with Dottie, taking Guy to appointments. Other times it was cooking up some dinner or doing something in the yard that we knew that Guy would try to do if we didn't get to it first. Dottie knew she could ask me for anything, and Guy allowed me to help him in ways that I think were hard for him. He'd always been a source of strength to his friends and family, and now he needed others to help him, and he didn't like needing help. He made sure I knew how much he loved me and how grateful he was that I was there as often as I could be to help Dottie, who he absolutely lived for. Guy allowed me to step up and do some of the things that Susie would have done if she'd been able to. It was a profound honor to be trusted in that way, and I will be forever grateful for that honor. In closing, I've written a note to Guy, which I will share with all of you, and I actually think he's read it. Dear Guy, thank you for trusting me. I've trusted you since the day I met you 25 years ago. It means the world to me that you trusted me back. I'll keep an eye on Dottie along with the rest of her circle of family and friends. We've got this. We bought the liquid nails that was on your list for the hardware store. We aren't exactly sure what to do with it, but we have it in stock now. We also found the Grill Master barbecue cleaning brush that you had hidden in the garage. Don't worry, we won't give it to Biff. Dottie and I have been working on the Pittsburgh-style steak, and we're making steady progress with you. I'm going to miss watching football with you. I'll cheer for the Falcons and the Bucks, unless of course they're playing the Seahawks. And I'll cheer for the Georgia Bulldogs no matter what. That's way more fun than cheering for the Bucks, the Falcons, or the Seahawks because the Bulldogs actually win a lot. I hope we did you proud with Dottie's 80th birthday celebration. Knowing you as well as I do, I'm certain we will get extra points for effort, even if our kazoo playing left a little to be desired. I know you're in a better place now and that you're no longer in pain. Please give Susie a hug for me and give Lolly a cuddle. And in case there's any doubt in your mind, I want to say out loud that knowing you has enriched my life, both my personal life and my business life. If I come up against something that I'm not sure how to handle, I can ask myself what you would do. And I find the guidance I can trust. I love you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, that's a tough act to follow. Hey everyone, I'm Bill Miller. I met Guy in the early 80s, Guy and Dottie in the early 80s. My wife Maxine and I, we moved out to Colorado to become ski bums and lived up in Steamboat Springs for a while, and Guy and Dottie would come out and ski with us. And Maxine went and got pregnant while we were ski bums. And Guy and Dottie came out the summer before our daughter was born. and summer of '85. And Maxine was big pregnant, and I didn't know what was about to hit me. And anyhow, so later in January that year, I had been working, well, our daughter had been born, and I had worked something like 45 or 48 days in a row, or almost around the clock, in a ski town, not making ends meet. And the first day I had off, I said, and it was the day that the Challenger blew up. We were sitting there, had this new baby on my knee. She was born in November. And we watched that's back when you still watch that sort of thing. And anyhow, the Challenger blew up, but it was the point is, my first day off. I guess the Challenger story's the marker for me. But I was so exhausted from working so much. And I knew that I could make a living in Atlanta, back where I grew up in Atlanta. And I said, so after ski season, we'll move back to Atlanta and I'll get a real job. And the next day, as I recall, Guy Crain called me up. And I think Guy knew that there was a hungry fellow with a new baby that needed work. He called me and offered me a job. And the 1st of February, I went to work for him for a company that he had started that sold some products like Terry described earlier, that obscure, they were bucket teeth people. I don't know if you know what bucket teeth are, some of us do, but that's what they were. And it was evidence that you could make money doing anything. And the first week I was in Atlanta working for Guy, he says, if this company goes kaput, which it might, I can give you a job for this other company, CAB. And anyhow, that company didn't go kaput. And Guy taught me how to be a business person. And one of the things, I wrote a number of things thinking about him. I had the picture of him sitting at his desk looking at the camera. That was taken in 1982, so I wasn't working for him yet. But he was still looking at me like, can't you see I'm working? And I had gotten I had this portable computer that was about the size of a big suitcase when I came to work for Guy, and it had this program in it that was the precursor of Lotus 123, which, yeah, VisCalc, and it was super cumbersome to operate compared to what they have today. But Guy was super disdainful of computers, and thought they were a waste of time. But we were analyzing prices for this group of products of 200 or 300 line items, and he saw what this program could do. Well, you just copied it to that cell, to that cell, to that cell, and it did the whole. So Guy got into computers right away. And I remember a few years later, and he was still had some disdain for them. For a number of years, I guess, he had some disdain for computers. But I remember he became the biggest computer nerd. Not nerd, but I mean, he'd sit at his desk at his computer just studying it, just super intently, which was, that's what he did. One of the things that I remembered was that he taught me to not be, I use the word disdainful of products that you could sell. I was telling Terry earlier about the sprinkler heads in the buildings, that Guy encouraged me to look at the hooks that hold them up in industrial buildings. I said, Guy, those things they're worth pennies or dimes or maybe quarters. He said, but Bill, there's millions of them sold. And we never got into that, but that led me to this other thing that that I discovered, thanks to guys, don't discount it because it looks silly or cheap, or you just don't automatically write it off. So he taught me that. That was a great skill that he gave me. And we discovered these spikes, an 8-inch spike that they use in golf course maintenance. And there were 32 of them on the back of this machine building golf courses back in the 80s. And I was at a customer's place and I said, what is that? And he told me, and how much do you pay for them? And he told me, and I went back and told Guy about it. Guy said, we can get those made. He knew exactly what to do with it. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. If for every one you sell, I'll give you $50 and I'll take $50, and then we'll give the rest to the company. Okay. And we put a nice little chunk of change in our pockets with that. And it's the part number, I had to give it a part number. Spike was the part number. But Guy also, Guy would I don't know if I want to bring this up here, but we would argue sometimes. And Guy was a passionate debater and arguer and fighter. But he didn't discourage it at all amongst the people that, at least with me, he didn't discourage at all. And I remember sometimes we'd be in where we'd have our little board meetings, and there'd be 3 people on that side, 3 people on that side, and me and Guy, and we'd be shouting at each other. And it was, as I recall, it was just super constructive. And that's what he encouraged it. He encouraged that type of shoot down this idea, shoot it down with passion. And so he gave me that, and I'm grateful for that. He was super circumspect. He would walk around a proposal or an idea with wariness, and whereas I would sometimes, God, he was wary of shiny objects, is how I like to say it. Like, what about this? What about this? And he says, well, he'd walk around it and think about it. And he gave me that perspective to don't discount it, but don't go out and buy it. He taught me things like one lawyer in a town will go broke, but 2 lawyers, they'll make a good living. And he mentored me, he mentored Terry, he mentored a lot of us, a lot of people. He mentored people that that never met Guy. I had this young man working for me for a number of years. And often and Harry, this young man, I encouraged him to argue with me and to fight with me. And Harry often would say, well, is that something Guy Crain said? And Harry never met Guy. Harry's from Seattle. And I came here for you, Donnie. And it's important for me that you know what he meant in my life, and that he impacted me, and he impacted and impacts me, and his fingerprints are all over my life, and my condolences.
Thank all of you for coming, and especially those of you some of you came from across the country, and I really appreciate your coming to honor Guy, to celebrate his life. He had a wonderful life, had a wonderful personality, and I'm the luckiest one to have had him as my partner, best friend, and confidant for so long. We had such a wonderful life together. There certainly were rocky times, but on the whole, boy, what a ride. And we realized, and we were thankful for how fortunate we were. What a great time we were having. One of the quotes I read said, "Don't be sad that it has ended, but be happy that it was." I think that's true. It's very difficult. That's why I wanted this to be a happy occasion, remembering what a remarkable guy he was and what a great life he had. Guy was a man of character and integrity. He was strong, positive, determined, with a never give up attitude. This remained true even as his health declined. An example of this is the time I discovered him and his metal walker out on top of a hill of rocks overlooking our waterfall, tending to something that had to be taken care of. I didn't know what to do because I didn't have enough strength to help him down, and I didn't have the words to make him come down on his own. I could just see disaster coming very quickly. So I called my backup, Brenda, in Washington, to get advice. He always wanted to push the limits, which I guess was a good thing, but also scary. He was a gentle man, even through the last 2 years or so, which were challenging, to put it nicely. He was almost always popular with his doctors and caregivers, probably because he never lost his sense of humor. Excuse me. He maintained a sense of humor and was rarely irritable. But there were times that he and I would have to remind ourselves and each other that we were in this together and not to take out our frustration, exhaustion, and pain on each other. Marie Bogdanov, founder of Villages for Veterans, offered me the opportunity to name their next puppy in training to be a service dog for a disabled veteran. I was thrilled and honored to be able to name that sweet boy Guy. The first picture I saw of puppy Guy looked like he was strong and determined, just like my Guy. And he's going to grow up to be a great support and partner to some lucky veteran, changing their life for the better, just as Guy did with me all these years. Guy was always thinking of me. He started talking about my big 80th birthday coming up even a year before the date. I had no idea what kind of celebration I would want, but he tried to plan a surprise, memorable trip with our good friend Brenda, who is also our travel agent. When his health kept deteriorating and he knew a trip wasn't going to happen, he started talking with my girlfriends in the neighborhood about planning a more manageable event. He didn't know he wouldn't be here when June 17th rolled around, but he swore them to secrecy and they felt honor-bound to uphold a dying man's wishes, which they did, surprising me with a kazoo concert in the driveway, stupid headgear for all of us, a balloon-bedecked booth at Bonefish with our favorite server, the amazing Crystal, and a beautiful large banner on our garage announcing my age to the whole neighborhood when we returned to the house. Even though he had plenty of reason to be, he was rarely cranky. But he was pranky, even to the end. He spent his last 2 days at home under hospice care. On his last day, he was asleep or unconscious, I don't know which. But when I leaned over the hospital bed to kiss his cheek, he went, "Grr!" scaring me and making me laugh, and also surprising Pete and Maria, who were just a few feet away. He didn't say or do anything else and appeared to be still asleep. It was something Guy had done to me on other occasions. So he must have just been reminding me that the mischievous prankster was still in him. There's a picture I found and I put on the video. I wish I had a click that I could show you which, but I'm pretty sure it was before we were married, where Guy is looking at me like, "You aren't really going to do that, are you? Because if you do, I'm going to leave your ass." Well, I'm pretty sure I did, and he didn't. Like adding those pictures, if you've seen him, of long ago when he was testing out a mustache and a beard. I put it on there. And the one of him showing off his muscles on the beach. Yeah, I did it. But it's your fault, because you should have written me a script or a song that I could do tonight. You were the best at that, and it would have been done right. At the end of the video, there's a photo that I took when Lisa and I were walking the dogs on the day before Guy came home to be under hospice care. Where's Lisa? It was a beautiful village's sky, and it looked like heaven was opening up for Guy. It consoles me to think that our precious Susie was waiting there to welcome him. Thank you again for coming and honoring God.